Hello, happy Tuesday, everyone. I'm excited for this week's questions. It looks like we have a ton of really good ones. So I'm going to launch right into that. My only quick announcement is that on Wednesday, we're going to have a little workshop. I'm calling it a workshop. It's more of a structured class on offer negotiation. So I'm going to go through a whole bunch of things there. My goal there is actually to re-record some of the content from the course just to update it and make it a little bit more. We had a few different people teaching that before, so I just want to make sure that that is all unified. So if you are in the community, you are welcome to attend that live. There will, of course, be the replay, and it's going to end up kind of parsed into the offer course as well. So a few different ways to access that. I want to dive into the questions because there are a lot and I want to get through as many as possible. So as always, I'm going to timestamp the answer on the question right within the thread. So let's launch into it. Our first question here is, all right, what is the general etiquette for navigating looking for a new job while still working at your current one, especially when it's a pivot to a different field? This person's particularly wondering about the strategies to differentiate on LinkedIn and also not draw attention to the fact that she's looking within her own team. Okay, so a couple of things here. Number one, you can put open to work on your profile. As long as you are properly categorized at your company, you can do the type of open to work announcement that only happens for recruiters, so like not public, and your company won't see it. However, if they're using outside recruiters or somebody isn't properly categorized with the company, but they have a recruiter seat, there is a risk that they will see that you're open to work. So I just want to put that out there. That's always a question that I get in conjunction with job seeking while employed. So it's great to have open to work because you're going to get more outreach from recruiters, but there is a small risk that somebody at your company will notice. So if you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. I would say things that you can do. So on the back end of LinkedIn, when I'm looking for candidates for jobs, I can see that there's this thing called like more likely to move. And these are people who are engaging in the platform in a couple of different specific ways, like updating pieces of their profile, updating their headline, their about statement, their experience. The platform flags that as a possible job seeker. So to me, that shows up in a special category. And I do look at those people with priority. When I have a high importance role that I have like a time sensitive thing, the hiring manager wants people right now, I'm usually going to narrow down my search to open to work and more likely to move because I'm going to get a higher response rate and I'm going to get people who are motivated to get on the phone with me. Now, for very niche roles, I'm going to reach out to anybody who looks great, whether they have open to work or they've been working on their profile or not. But those populations that are open to work and more likely to move are actually the better candidates from a speed standpoint. So just by the virtue of getting into your LinkedIn profile and making some tweaks, that's not something that your team or your company is necessarily going to see or even notice, but that is something that on the back end, the algorithm does notice. So that's one thing. When you want to distinguish yourself on LinkedIn, starting to put things in your profile, elements in your profile for what that pivot looks like. So if you are currently a cell biologist, but you want to pivot into maybe a non-lab based role, maybe it's more of a strategy or a communications or operations, start to work that into your about section. Make specific bullet points highlighting how you've contributed in those ways within your about section and your experience section, because again, that's going to show up to recruiters. And we're going to reach out in that way. If you do feel comfortable putting open to work, you can also put the titles that you're open to, which I actually do look at. So I will check those titles. And in fact, I think it's useful to show you this. My only hesitation is that I want to protect confidentiality for folks. So I'm going to go ahead and give me a second. I'm going to load up something and then share my screen and show you exactly what I mean here. I'm going to go to a project that has nobody from our field at all. I was doing this as a favor to a friend. He owns a accounting company. And I just pulled together a quick search for him to show him how to use LinkedIn. So I'm going to show you that pipeline and exactly what I mean when I am saying these things, because these candidates are highly unlikely to be in our community. Let me pop a screen in here. Oh my gosh, why do I have so many screens? There we go. All right. I think you should be able to see my screen now. Okay, so I'm in my LinkedIn search. This is the LinkedIn Recruiter interface. And what you can see here, I'm going to go to the talent pool. This is my custom search that I built to help out this person. So you can see I've done a lot of filtering here. So you can see 29 open to work, 5 active talent. That's what I was just talking about, where these people are working on their profile actively. And there's some overlap here. So if I reach out to all 29 of these, there might be, 2 or 3 more that were active talent. But when I am looking at people who are open to work only, so I'm going to filter down to open to work. Let me just pop into this person's profile. Here on open to work, I can actually see what titles they're going for. And so when you're a career changer, if you feel comfortable putting just privately to recruiters only that you're open to work, you can actually give some really, really useful information. And I do look at this because, again, I'm looking for people who are ready to talk with me fast, not people who are like maybe working, maybe open to it, whatever. So I do use these filters, where are they willing to work? What job titles are they looking for? So this is some way you can distinguish yourself on LinkedIn. And then in terms of I'm going to close this down. In terms of then just thinking about how you might continue to do that search while you're currently employed, start applying. You already know all of the ways to do that. I watched you have a very successful job search previously last year when you landed this current job. So I have every confidence that you can repeat that. You did a great job of networking while you were applying. So having coffee chats, that doesn't automatically signal intent to move. I would start to reach out and have coffee chats with people who have made the move that you've already made. So this is going to be a really meaty one. I'm actually going to show you how to do that too. I'm spending a lot of time on this answer because I think this is relevant to a lot of people. So let me actually share my screen again. I'm going to show you how to do the search I'm talking about. All right, so I'm going to go to my regular LinkedIn now. Totally normal LinkedIn, no paid upgrades or anything. Anybody can do this search. All right, so you're going to go and search, and let's just say that you want to make the change. You have to put something in the search bar, so don't get hung up on what you put here. But let's just say generally you want to go be a program manager. So I'm going to put that into the search bar and hit enter. Okay, now it takes me here, and what I really want to do is go down to the people. So I'm going to pull up people. Now, these are people with program manager somewhere in their title. This search bar is not incredibly specific. Okay. So what I actually want to do is I want to take this and I want to go to all filters and I want to go over to the job title. And I want to put this in here with parentheses because I want it to have program manager, that exact phrase in the job title, not program somewhere and manager someplace else. Not 2 different jobs, one with program and then a job 3 jobs back that had manager. Okay. So I want program managers right now today. And I'm going to limit this to the United States. And I'm going to hit show results. Okay. So these now are going to be program managers. You'll see that they've got that in their title, their current title. And now what I would do is I'd refine this for what I am now. Okay. So let's say this person is a molecular biologist. I'm making this up, I know, but bear with me. So what I'm really looking for now are people who were molecular biologists in some way and are now program managers. And then I'm going to start to go and look at these people. So this person, Thomas, let's take a look here. Right now, a biomarker program manager, but was a cell and molecular biologist. So this person transitioned from the lab into program management. I would send this person a LinkedIn request if I'm not connected with them. And in that request, I would add a note and I would say something along the lines of, I came across your profile because I'm considering making a career change to program management. Could I buy you a virtual coffee to learn how you did it? And you can even say, I'm a molecular biologist, right? So you're creating this rapport and offer to buy the virtual coffee. This is key. And have that conversation because you're going to learn a lot about how that jump was made, and you might just network yourself into a job. You never know. And that can be done throughout your entire life. You don't need to be job searching, but if you have a vague idea, like 3 years from now, I would like to be X, start having those conversations. You're going to learn so much by doing that. All right. I'm going to move on to the next question. Let me just go to that. And shoot, I already messed up and I didn't put the timestamp in. So let's put minute marker 1 because that was the first question. I don't know if that's true. All right, next question. We're going to go minute 11. All right, we are, okay, in such a competitive job market where many candidates already meet the technical requirements, what do hiring managers really look for beyond technical expertise when deciding who stands out? We are looking for, and I'm lumping myself in here, we hiring managers, recruiters, we are looking for somebody who is going to succeed. And there's a few ways we look for that. So first and foremost, we're really looking for somebody who feels like they're going to mesh with our mission. And that's where this stupid cover letter that I, harp on about comes in, really putting your mission forward, using the headline in your resume to align yourself with the company's mission, the job's mission. Everybody can go in and list a bunch of, skills that match the job. What we really want to know is, are you going to be in it for the long term? It's really expensive to hire people. It's really expensive to replace people. So it kind of stinks when we bring someone in and within a year they are moving out to another job. That means we didn't do a great job of finding somebody who had growth potential and sticking power. And, sometimes there's extraneous circumstances like the company lost funding or whatever, and you clearly see there's no room for progression. So you leave. But in most cases, we're looking for somebody who can stay it for 2 years at minimum, because 2 years is a good run. A year and a half is fine. Like, we consider that a win as well, but like 2 years is definitely into the win category in terms of the financial benefits of finding that right person and not having to backfill that role consistently. So if you can convince me in the resume and in the cover letter that you're that person, then that's going to go a long way when there's multiple people. Let's say 10 candidates all have pretty identical skill sets, but one candidate sitting there and going, I am mission aligned. I'm so excited about this company because I see myself contributing to this mission for the long term. That is what's going to distinguish you. So I hope that helps. Oh, and also do that in the interview. So if you get the interview, again, we're going to be crafting answers that align you with the mission so that you continually kind of beat that drum. Next question. We are at minute 13:30. That's not how you say that. 13:30. Okay. Do you think working with a recruiter would be helpful for finding a scientist level role? If so, what's the best way to find a recruiter? No, sorry, that's not actually very useful these days. So if a recruiter, first of all, let me just say this. If a recruiter offers to help you in return for money, like they're going to shop your resume around somehow to companies, that's a red flag. That's not actually a thing. We recruiters get paid by the companies. So don't pay for somebody to like shop your resume around. That's not useful. Working with a recruiter these days is really just a networking thing. Like, it's great to stay on my radar. It's great to stay on, the radar of various recruiters, but we're really inundated with candidates these days that we say it's like a buyer's market or a seller's market, right? It's a buyer's market, meaning that the companies have a lot of inventory to choose from. And what you're going to be better served doing is really making your application stand out. The recruiter is not going to do that for you. They can advocate for you. So let's just say that you apply to one of my jobs or you network with me in LinkedIn and I think, oh yeah, I actually do have a job for this person. I'm going to ask for your resume. If I reach out to you on LinkedIn, I'm going to ask for your resume. It's your job to make that resume really awesome. So that's where your tailoring for the job comes in. Again, aligning yourself with the mission. So, yes, it's great to reach out to recruiters. You can send them resumes, whatever. It's not a really high yield use of your time. I think networking with people within the companies is going to be a better use of your time because those individuals are actually incentivized by money to help find people for roles. So, a recruiter within a company cannot get a finder's fee or a referral fee for helping to find somebody for a job. That's their actual job, is just finding people. So, people who work in the companies often get a $3,000 referral bonus. And so, if you're out there networking with people who are doing similar jobs with you, who you might be rubbing shoulders with in that job, and you have a really good conversation with them and they refer you into the job, they stand to get a nice little bonus. So that is a better use of your time. They're really incentivized. And if you're working with an external, like a headhunter type recruiter who's outside of companies and they get a placement fee for finding candidates, it's fine to send your resume in and let them shop you around. I just wouldn't expect that to bear a lot of fruit. And they're not going to have a lot of meaningful insight into where, how to make your resume better or how to get you hired. They're just kind of going. Often they actually repackage your resume into a standard format, which is really ugly. And I hate getting these, but they will anonymize your resume completely so that when they submit you to a company, the recruiter inside the company can't go track you down and like recruit you themselves. Sorry, I'm getting tongue tied. And that is actually a really ugly way to come across in those. Like it's a very ugly kind of formulaic resume, and it's not going to put you in your best light. It's fine. It is a way to get jobs, but at the scientist level, it's not going to be your best way. At the executive level, maybe better. Okay. Next question. We're at 17. All right, we've got here networking LinkedIn questions. Do you think the recommendations section of LinkedIn helps an applicant stand out? If so, who would be best to ask for a recommendation? Manager level, colleagues, or diversity of levels? So I'll start with that. There are two good questions on this thread. Recommendations. It is a thing that I have seen have some small impact. It is not something that I think you should dedicate a lot of your time to, but if you have a few people who are willing to recommend you and you recommend them, like that's all great. We're still going to ask for references if we get you to the end stage of a job. It's not honestly something I've really gone down to that section to like see if someone's going to be a good fit for a job. If someone has a lot of recommendations, I kind of chalk that up to their networking skills more than anything, which is a good thing. Like I look at that candidate and I think, okay, probably a fairly personable individual who gets along with folks and therefore is not worried about asking, not shy about asking. And usually those people, I can also see who they've recommended, and they've recommended some of the same people. So it's sort of a you scratch my back, I scratch yours situation in those recommendations. If you do get them, I'd say a mix of levels is great. There's no rules there. Get as many as you feel like you want. If you have some great manager level ones, awesome. Recommend them back as a great boss, right? So it's a way to build some rapport with folks. It's also a really good way to reconnect with people if you're getting back to being active on LinkedIn. You haven't been very active recently. It's not a bad thing to reach out and say to some of your great former colleagues, managers, peers, hey, I'm on the job trail. Curious if you would mind giving me a recommendation. Give them some outlines too. Say, I'm applying for jobs in, we'll just keep going with molecular biology. Could you give me a recommendation for that? Or, whatever skills you really want to highlight there. And then ask, offer, I'd be happy to write a recommendation for you as well. Anything in particular you'd like me to highlight? It's a good way to just reconnect with some folks, and they might have a connection for you. So not a bad thing to do, not the highest value thing you can do. It's a thing. If you feel like you have time and job seeking is your full-time job, sure, dedicate a little time to it. There's no harm in it. Your second question here is, do you have a formula how to ask a LinkedIn connection to make an introduction to one of their connections? For example, I say I have no connections at Roche, but I see connections who are connected to my colleague from Thermo, and I want to ask for an introduction. Yeah, so in that case, I would reach out and I would be honest with them about your intents and just say, hey, Right now, I'm applying to a job at Roche. I see you're connected to insert the name of this individual. Uh, are you fairly close with them, and would you feel comfortable making a warm introduction? No pressure if not. Here's the thing, I don't know if you've seen my LinkedIn, but I have like 17,000 connections. I don't know everybody well enough to make an introduction. Now, I'm a pretty bold person, so sometimes I'll just make the introduction anyway, whether I feel like I know them well enough or not, but not everybody's like that. So just know that like most people on LinkedIn are connected with at least a handful, if not 8,000 or 10,000 people that they actually really don't know that well. And so they may not feel super comfortable, and that's not a mark against you. So make sure you leave them that out. Like if you don't know them very well or you don't feel comfortable, that's totally fine. I'm getting a bit of an unstable internet signal here. So if you are having any trouble with the streaming, I apologize. It's getting better. Okay. The next question, minute 21. All right. The next question here. I had actually a follow-up question. I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer it super well. I'm going to try. So the question is, I have my master's in biotech and a good knowledge of IP patents. I have a break in my domain. So I think a job break, and want to start a new job. And related jobs like clinical research, regulatory affairs, something like that, ASAP. Do you have any suggestions how I can navigate to get a job? Any recommended courses, tips, or fields? So this is a bit too, it says, I'm interested to give my patent bar exam too. This is a bit broad here. Thanks, Sophia. I appreciate you saying that. I get these notifications. That's scary. I'm like, is anybody hearing me? So I appreciate that. Okay. So I'm curious. So I'll go through a couple of career paths here. This may or may not answer your question. If you want to stay in IP and you want to get your patent bar, you're probably going to need to work at a firm. So there are quite a few firms that will take people who have their patent examiner. So that's something you can take. I don't think you need to have any hours working under an attorney. Don't quote me on that, but that seems to be the case, is that you can get your patent examiner license without working under an attorney. But I think you need to have some certain hours working under an attorney to take the bar. Again, don't quote me on that. This is just what I've heard from some other people. So the canonical career path there is that people will get their master's or their PhD. They'll take that patent examiner's license, and then they'll work at a firm. And there's quite a few really well-known large IP firms where you can cut your teeth. Now you're going to be working 80 hours a week. Great experience, but like it is an entry level like law job, and it's a lot. During that time, a lot of people will get their JD, which I think you may need to get your to get the bar for, and I think that's like a night thing for a lot of people. At least that's what I've seen other candidates that have done this. It seems like they take a little bit longer, but they do like night school, and it's partially paid by the firm because patent attorneys are gold, especially if they have a background, a degree in biotech or something else, a PhD, a master's. So if you can get that, that means that you're going to work a lot. You're going to get your JD. You'll be able to sit for the bar. And then after a certain number of years, moving into a biotech to be like in-house IP counsel is certainly a possibility. We actually hire those people fairly young. So when I think about somebody's career path that I've hired into my companies, when they've wanted in-house IP counsel, it's been something like, they got their PhD, they started work at a firm, and they worked for like 3 years and got their JD during that time. Sat for their bar, maybe worked 1 extra year as counsel, so maybe 4 years at a firm, and then we hired them as a director level person at a company. So instantly $220,000 base. So it's a pretty lucrative career path. It's also a lot of work. So that's one thing. If you want to spin your IP knowledge into other domains, I would just need to know a little bit more. So feel free to follow up And, maybe next week I can go a little bit deeper on this, but really the sky's the limit. It's just a matter of what excites you and what gets you up in the morning, and then mushing that together into a career, whether it's in a company, whether it's in academia. Another really cool way you could go would be to do licensing at an academic institution. So their tech transfer office, they file so many patents because they basically file, I think on my research, my undergrad research, I think we filed 2 or 3 patents. And that's just really standard. It's just filing patents. I see that on people's resumes all the time, because academic institutions never know what's going to hit, right? Something cool is discovered in the lab. They want to make sure they get their cut of the pie if that ever turns into a successful therapy. And those licensing offices do really cool work. And that work can be anything from filing patents to negotiating deals, licensing deals with companies when a company is like, yes, I want to use that particular nugget of knowledge in our therapy, in our device, in our whatever. Then that's the office that negotiates all of that. So there's also like a business development and a partnerships, and like there's a lot of components to those tech transfer offices, and we recruit really heavily from those tech transfer offices. That's your springboard into getting into venture capital, for instance. That's your springboard into getting into a really good business development role that sort of touches IP and licensing. So that could be a really cool career path as well. It's an overlooked one because it doesn't pay very well for the few years that you're getting that good tech transfer experience. You might be there for 4 years and it could lead to a really great kind of next step. Hope that's helpful. Next question. Oh, this is a question. 26. What is this? 27. I'll just round up. Okay, minute 27 here. Do you have any advice for keeping motivation up in this job market? I can feel my hopes slipping through my fingers the longer I'm out of biotech. I feel this, and I know so many people in here can also empathize with this. We had a comment like this from another member, and the helpful comments on that and the people offering support, everybody's like, yes, same. Here's the thing. There's a lot of things you cannot control right now. And that is what makes it feel so incredibly overwhelming. When you are trying to think, like if you're setting goals and your goal is get a job, there are so many things out of control, out of your specific direct control in getting a job, that it can feel like an insurmountable goal. And so that's why I always ask people to pull back and set goals that you can control. So those also turn out to be little dopamine boosts. Every time you check off an item in your to-do list, in your goal set, you're going to get a little bit of a boost, whether it's gotten you a job or not. That is how human brains work. And so this is one reason we have our goals chat, and I'm incentivizing it so much. I really, really want people to be setting goals that are measurable and attainable every single week and working toward those, because that gives you that little boost of dopamine when you complete those goals. And the goals are as simple as like, you can't control whether you get an interview. You can to an extent, but bear with me. You can't control somebody else's decision to give you an interview or not. What you can control is how many job applications you did and how well you tailored those job applications. So really sitting down and saying, I am going to tailor the heck out of this job application, and I'm going to do that for 10 jobs this week. And you will check that off. You'll know you did your absolute best. You know you did that and you made forward progress, and that whether you get an interview out of that or not, that's beyond your control, but at least you've done everything in your power to make it happen. Whether you take a course, maybe that's a goal. Like you can control whether you finish a course and do a course or not. You can control how many people you reach out to on LinkedIn for networking. You can control so many things. And everything out of your control is something that if you're not setting these little measurable goals, feels insurmountable. So that's why I really harp on that. It's surprisingly helpful to set goals and check them off. So if you're not doing that currently, start, and I think you're going to see just a little bit of momentum building here. And they should be ambitious goals. Like, you should feel really good about them. If you think 10 job applications seems overwhelming, well, how good are you going to feel when you actually do it? You can control that. And if job seeking is your job, you carve out that time, you go to work every morning, you get that done, and you check it off your list, and you'll get the dopamine hit and probably at least land some interviews. That's really the goal here, but at least you're doing your part. I hope that helps. Okay, the next one, minute 30. Ish 30. I'm going to do 30. Okay. This one is, if a job listing has an expiration date, i.e., it only allows you to apply for a specific amount of time, is that a red flag that it could be a ghost job where they're just posting publicly for legal reasons before doing an internal hire? I just applied for a job which is only accepting applications for 1 week and am curious about the short timeline. The job was on the company's career page and also posted on LinkedIn. So this is going to be a total non-answer because there are just so many reasons that job posters do what they do. So here we go. Yes, that absolutely could be a ghost job. We do have to post jobs sometimes, especially bigger companies, and they have to post jobs per their company bylaws. If they're publicly traded, that's often one requirement, even if they know who they're going to hire, even if it's an internal hire that they're promoting into the job. Some companies have to post a job publicly before they make a promotion. And you're never going to know that. So if it's an exciting job to you, I would go ahead and apply, and I would put your best foot forward. And the other thing that you should note is that many times when a role has to be posted for a certain amount of time, they also have to interview a certain amount of candidates. So they may know who they're going to hire, but they have to interview 2 additional candidates, so 3 total. So why not be one of those other 2? Maybe you won't get that job, but maybe next time they're hiring, you're high on the list because they were like, oh, I mean, we're just promoting this person into it, but like, wow, that Rebecca was amazing. Maybe they create a role for you. Maybe the role isn't exactly right for you, but they like you so much, they make something totally different. There are so many ways to get a job. So I think that people overthink the reason for, like, they're trying to get inside the company's psyche with these job posts, and it's impossible to do. That's going to drive you absolutely nuts. So my advice is don't do that. Don't go nuts trying to figure out the motivation. If you're excited about a job, create an amazing application. Put your best foot forward because you never know what's going to happen there. The other reasons that I could see that happening is that a company is in a real tight rush and they are getting a lot of applications. So they want to just make a decision quickly. And sometimes leaving a job open for just continual applications actually gives certain hiring managers or certain teams like analysis paralysis. There are people who cannot, I've got several hiring managers right now on our list where we actually cut them off. Like, if we kept presenting candidates, even if they loved a candidate they were interviewing, they would never make a decision. They would always think like, "Oh, what if there's someone just slightly better coming along?" And we'd lose our amazing candidates that are in process. So it is an actual thing that we do with, I can think of 4 or 5 hiring managers right now that my team's working with, where we know we've worked with them before. When they get 3 candidates in the interview stage, we stop. We don't present them more candidates. In the background, we may be having conversations and sort of filling up a little bit of a queue in case somebody drops out. But if we keep on going, we will have this role open for the next year and a half. It will never end. So that's another major reason for that, and just cutting off the applications. And so I think just don't try to get inside their head. Keep going, apply if you're excited. You just never know what's going to happen. All right, next question is minute 34. All right, we've got here, what are your thoughts on applying to more than one role at the same company at the same time? Do you apply to both at the same time, or apply to the job that is a better fit first, wait for an outcome, then go to the second one? I already see a problem with this strategy. It might be too late to apply for the second job. How about applying to the same function, but at different levels? Okay, I'm going to back up and go with 2 different jobs first, and then we'll do the 2 different levels, okay? With our a modern applicant tracking system. If it seems like you are applying to a job through an actual applicant tracking system that's collecting information, it's like a real interface, then we're going to see that you've applied to multiple jobs. And that's not a bad thing. Where it becomes a bad thing is when I see someone's applied to all of the jobs, which happens a lot, especially with these AI apply tools that are so pervasive right now. I'll see literally a candidate has applied to every job that's open, and they're at vastly different levels, all different functions. Like, no, that's probably not real applications. If you're applying to a couple of jobs and they make sense, that's not going to be a red flag for me. I would apply to the one you're most excited about first and maybe wait a day or so if you feel like you can, and then apply to the other one. But honestly, this is another case. Don't overthink it. If you're excited about a job, do an awesome job tailoring your resume and apply. Just get your application out the door. Overthinking it and trying to play games with these applications, like you're just never going to know what's going on behind the scenes. And you're right, you might shoot yourself in the foot by waiting too long. So apply for both. And when you write your cover letter, you can call that out and you can even say why you applied for both roles. And so I would mission align that cover letter and I would say, I've applied for X and Y job at the company, both fit, and say, this cover letter is specifically for Y job. That way you're not confusing them because it's all going to be a mishmash in your profile, depending on the applicant tracking system. Some do a really good job of stratifying by job, like which application materials, which resume and cover letter, but some do a less good job and it all ends up in one spot. So just make that clear. Otherwise that does get a little confusing, but your resume in your headline should specifically call out the job title in some way so it's clear. And then it should be tailored for that job, even if it's slight differences. Make sure it really is. And if you're asked about it, you want to have an answer ready. So you want to say why you applied for those two jobs. Different levels. This is another thing that I would say apply for the level that actually, by the letter of the job, fits you better, instead of applying for both levels. So if you are looking at a director and a senior director role, look at the number of years of experience and try and aim for the job that makes the most sense. That is a little bit of a red flag to me when somebody applies for both roles, when there are two different levels. It's not unheard of, and I'm not saying don't do it, but that one I'd be just a little more judicious with than applying for two different roles in the company. With the leveling, we're a lot more conscious of salary there. And so the other thing to think is, where do the salary bands typically fall? So I can tell you for director level roles, at least in, I'm going to go with Boston, and you can cost of living adjust for different areas. But for Boston, for a director, our bands for director are typically anywhere from around 200,000 to around 230,000 base salary. And senior director, maybe 220, 225 to 250. So that's another way to sort of think about it, is like, if you know where your salary is supposed to be, apply for jobs at that level. The titling is a lot more standardized, luckily, at the director level and above than it is below the director level. So below the director level, companies come up with all kinds of titling, and you'll see some companies call the very same job level a scientist versus a senior scientist. Some companies, the entry, they don't have associate scientists or research associates at all. It's all scientists. I'm thinking about Pfizer here. It's scientists and then senior scientists. And so the entry level for a non-PhD is scientist, and the entry level for a PhD is senior scientist. So that gets more confusing in terms of titling, but luckily at the director level, it's a lot more cut and dry. And with the salary as well. Even we get into weirdness with like principal scientist, associate director. Those are often the same thing, but some companies distinguish whether you're leadership track or not. And so there's a lot of confusion there. So luckily you're kind of in a class where you can reliably think about your salary and apply based on that. I hope that's really helpful. And our last question, I do have a few extra minutes. If anybody has any last minute questions and wants to drop them in the chat here, you are welcome to. Minute 39. Okay. Okay, so this question is, when interviewing for a backfill role, is it appropriate to ask why the previous person left? If so, who's the best person to ask? And at what stage in the interview process should that come up? So I have a twofold approach to this. And this is a really good question. I said, I think in the comments, it's a juicy question because, yeah, it's one of those things you're like, you don't want to mess this up and sound, come off wrong when you're asking this question. So here's how I would handle it. It's appropriate to ask the recruiter why the role is open. And so if you know it's a backfill role, they may not want to actually divulge why. That gets really touchy. Like, we don't want to say if someone got fired. But the better way to phrase it is, can I ask why this role is open? That way, even if you know it's a backfill, they may go into a little bit of detail. They may say, oh, so-and-so left for college, or, so-and-so decided to go get their PhD. Like, that's a pretty normal reason, right? Or so-and-so moved on to another company because they wanted to change careers, whatever. Don't expect a real meaningful answer if it's a backfill, because someone might have gotten fired. So we can't talk about that. That's really the bottom line. But here's how you get at it without getting the answer directly. Once you know the reason, and the recruiters maybe will or won't know the answers. So this is where you take it a little further in your interview process. When you're talking to the hiring manager, you can say something along the lines of, the recruiter shared with me that this is a backfill position. What are some things that how would I phrase this? I had a candidate ask this so badly. I'm going to say how it was asked badly, and then we're going to brainstorm on how to ask it well. I had a candidate asked, what did the other person do wrong? And like, that's such a negative way of putting it. So you want to make it a positive, right? So you can say something like, what would make somebody an amazing hire for this position? And what, if anything, would be different than the previous iteration of the job? So just acknowledging that the job itself usually changes. Even if it's a backfill, we've learned something, and the company's usually at a different stage. So what has changed? And then having the hiring manager articulate that, because that's going to give you a really good idea of where to then take the conversation. So if they say something along the lines of, previously we had someone who was really excellent in XYZ, and we realized that we also need this other skill set. We need someone who is a mass spec expert or whatever. They have a skill set over here. That's where you can say, oh, that's amazing. That sounds like a great fit because, and then you can talk about your skill set over here. So that's where you can highlight something that was missing before. It's getting the hiring manager to tell you a pain point without sounding negative. Okay. So that's how I would handle that. A really good question. All right. If there are no more questions, we're going to go do this. I'm going to run through and make sure I got all of them. Answered that. Yep. All right. I think I answered all the questions in the thread. Any further questions, if you want to drop them in here, I'll just tell you really quickly. I posted a little post in the community about elevator pitches. So last night, I was at this really fun event. It was it's an accelerator through North Carolina's sort of research triangle ecosystem. It's sponsored by KPMG. And I'll be advising this cohort of companies on talent strategy, because when they go to apply for funding, investors, they want to know who's going to do the job, how much is it going to cost. So I help them to create a plan for that. We do some budgeting and benchmarking, and even get some of those job descriptions drafted up so that when they have those conversations with investors, they're really clear on the who and the how much, because that is a very important thing to be clear on when someone's giving you a lot of money. And then hopefully I get to help them execute on that if they get funding. That's, the goal for these baby companies. So we were at this great kickoff last night, and all of the founders of these companies that are in this cohort were asked to just stand up, and it was not even elevator pitch. It was like, tell us all a little about your company. Keep it to 90 seconds. That was the mandate. So many people blew through that 90 seconds. A couple people had to be cut off, and That's pretty normal for early stage. This is the first time they've really been asked to do that. It was in front of a big crowd, not big, but there were probably like 60 people there. And, so nerves kind of took over. There were certainly some people who seemed like it was a little bit scary for them to get up and do. And then there were some people who just absolutely killed it, like killed it, did such a good pitch where I'm like, oh, I want to invest, right? Like really, really good pitches where that that person put a lot of thought and effort into that elevator pitch. And it just got me thinking how important those elevator pitches really are. So, if I could ask you all to have to do one thing this week, a little bit of homework, it's just to get really clear on that elevator pitch. If you're asked, to tell anybody, I don't care who it is, tell me a little about yourself. You should have something ready to go and it should be short. Nobody wants to listen to you drone on about it, right? It should be short and to the point. And so a really good exercise is to really outline that in bullet form, practice it out loud, and then practice it to a friend and time it because that is going to make you so much stronger when you get into those first interviews, really any interview where that first 90 seconds is so critical. You want to build rapport quickly and you want to tell them who you are and what you stand for really quickly and concisely and convincingly. It's a marketing pitch. You may not be like pitching a company for venture capital funding, but you are pitching yourself for a job. Similar, same, right? So get ready with those elevator pitches. I think that could be also a really fun workshop that we could put together, is giving you the step-by-step to creating those pitches. So if that sounds like a good thing, comment on that post. Let me know if that sounds interesting and we'll get something organized. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful and we'll see you Thursday maybe, and I'll see you next week.